Shoots and Ladders, episode 1. We have great content. This is awesome. For this first episode, we actually had live interaction by our very own Desiree Joseph.
This is just afterglow of last weekend. So River City Wrestling Con, it's a convention that's been around here in Jacksonville, I want to say around 2018. So it's about 6-7 years old. And it's slowly grown, and it's the best time ever.
So it seems like one of the highlights was Charles Wright, AKA the Godfather, AKA Papa Shango.
I am glowing. I have the biggest smile on my face. Let me tell you, I have a list of wrestlers that I've had really great interactions with. And I'll just make it very clear. Every single person that I've met throughout the years, I've had a very positive interaction with. But there's a couple that just really stand out to me. And I've always said it since the beginning. Sergeant Slaughter has always been my number one. And I think I might have topped it with Charles Wright, Papa Shango, Godfather. He was just someone that I loved during the Attitude Era. You know, the pimpin' ain't easy. So it was just that fun character. And when I found out he was coming, I was like, okay, he's on my list, but I didn't have like an expectation of what kind of interaction that I was going to have. And let me tell you, Saturday, he was dressed up as Papa Shango, and that's who my brother wanted to see. And then luckily the next day on Sunday, he was going to be dressed up as Godfather. So we're like, we're going to see him both days. He is the coolest guy ever. So if he ever comes to your local area for a convention, for a match, anything, go meet him. He is so much fun. His team, his handlers, I believe one of them, his name was Donnie. The coolest people. It's like a party there. It is, just telling us a whole bunch of stories, and it wasn't like a pay your money, here's an autograph and a picture, shake hands and go, because a couple of them are like that. He was there talking. He was telling us stories about The Undertaker.
What were some of the stories about The Undertaker that he was saying?
It's been documented that they were in a group, separate from the Clique,
Bones
the BSK,
BSK.
Bone Street Crew.
Yeah.
And so they were like really great friends. And that was one of the first things he talked to us about, was how he was an influence on Undertaker, because when he came in, as you remember, he had no tattoos. He wasn't doing that American Badass thing. It was, he was the dead man. And Charles Wright was saying, I'm this really big 6'7" Black man covered in tattoos. I listen to country music. I ride motorcycles. And he goes, Taker didn't do that until he started hanging out with me. And I'm like, okay, good to know. You're like the origin story. So it was just really cool. I'm like I was already a fan, but he just raised the bar. And even at the end of the day, we were walking around looking at cards, and he was packing up ready to go. And he, we weren't anywhere near him, and he walks over and, says, I had a great time this weekend, gives me a really big hug and tells me bye. And I'm like, so I'm toxic where I think that we're best friends because he made me so comfortable. My secret goal for this past weekend was to ask one of the stars that I met to at least do a shout out, do a promo, or just even talk about our podcast, because we are starting up. And that Sunday, I was like, I felt so good. And towards the end of our conversation, I knew it was pretty much done, and I was like, I have to do it. So I stopped him and I was like, can I ask one thing from you, please, just as a favor? I was like, can you just do like a 10-second shout out to my podcast? Without hesitation, he got into Godfather mode and was like, I don't need any direction. I got you, girl.
Hey, what's cracking everybody? WWE Hall of Famer, The Godfather, and I want you to watch the #1, that's right, the #1 podcast, Shoots and Ladders. See you there. Peace.
That was awesome.
He's a natural.
1,000,000%. Okay, awesome. So listen, thank you so much, Charles. Hey, hope we have you on a podcast one of these days.
I love you so much.
Awesome. All right, cool. So next interaction is, everyone knows him, obviously, and he's absolutely legendary. Whether you like WCW, whether you love ECW like myself, whether you love obviously WWE and just independence, the whole nine. All right, well, let's talk about Mick Foley.
Oh, Mick. He was like my #1 person I was going to meet this year when he was announced, and you could not believe it. He was here for both days, Saturday and Sunday, and he by far had the longest and most consistent line. And from what I could see of me just consistently walking around and looking, he never got up and took a break. He never stopped. He sat there for every single fan, did not make anyone wait. And so I finally got in line. I was like, okay, it's not going to die down. I'm just going to have to stand here. So it wasn't bad. The nicest man. And you could tell that it was already in the afternoon. It was already after lunchtime. He was exhausted because he didn't get up. And he still had this big smile on his face, had a lot of fun with both my brother and I. And when I went to go get my picture, he kind of like pushed my brother out of the way and he was like, get out of here. Let your sister sit down now. And he grabbed my phone and he's like, we're going to take selfies. We're not going to do regular pictures. Let's do a selfie. And I'm like, okay, whatever, Mr. Foley. And he had his Mankind mask on and, I got this really awesome picture with him and I'm like, oh, Mick Foley touched my phone. So yeah, he was really cool, really sweet.
That's awesome. Absolute legend. Now, did you have a long interaction with him? Was it kind of brief? It was. I mean, obviously you had the the interaction with the phone, but like, were you able to kind of ask him questions about some of his stories or kind of seeing stuff, or just it wasn't as long?
I didn't get that. I got maybe, and this was one of the things. It was one of those quicker interactions, but it was kind of like maybe not even 5 minutes where you run up there and I have this big grin on my face and I'm like, I love you so much, Mr. Foley. Thank you so much for being here. And, he'll, do a little bit of picking and teasing and, we sit down and take our pictures, but he was genuinely very nice, very friendly. So, I mean, I'm happy with what I got. And the fact that he was like, no, we're going to do a selfie. So I'm like, okay, you're cool. I love you.
All right. Awesome. All right, cool. So now the other interaction or the next interaction that I kind of just want to talk about is you were able to meet Teddy Long.
Yeah, that I wasn't expecting to meet Teddy Long. He came out of nowhere. And you know what? The reason why we had an interaction was he was hanging out at Godfather's table. We were just having a good time and everyone was hanging out at his table the entire weekend. And I'm sitting there talking to who was he, Papa Shango at the time? He was a Godfather. It was Sunday. And he turns around and he looks at me and in the middle of our conversation, he goes, you know who you look like? And I'm like, who? He goes, Mickey James. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you look like Mickey James. And Mickey James was there on Saturday. And I was like, I didn't even see, I mean, I saw her, but I didn't meet her. I was like, oh, that would have been fun to walk up to her and tell her that Teddy thinks we look similar. So, and he wouldn't stop. But he was there. He was having a good time. And then after we were having fun there, I was like, I'm going to go meet Teddy. And so I go to his table and it was another quick interaction, but it was so funny the entire day. Anytime I walk past him, he's like, hey, Mickey, hey, girl, hey, Mickey. And when we were talking, he was like, if you were wrestling with Mickey, he was like, oh, I would have a plan where y'all would, I guess, be twins or something. And one would run into the ring and then the other would come in and do something. And I'm like, what is going on in your mind right now? He's like, I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking of these things.
He still kind of has that producer mind, and
Oh yeah.
Right. So like, I think
I was like, tell me more. What else would you write for me?
yeah, for sure. Hey, look, he sees a star. So do I. So does everybody else in the podcast. So. All right, cool. Next one's is definitely interesting. It's really cool that he came there. Obviously, not everyone loves him, but you had an interaction with Eric Bischoff.
He was definitely on my list as soon as he was announced. It was Mick Foley and Eric Bischoff, just because of the Monday Night Wars. We are kids of the Attitude Era, and we were so lucky to grow up and understand what was going on and see everything live and live those storylines. And, as much as he may have a bad rap, he made what the Attitude Era was. He was there with NWO and WCW and Nitro, and yeah, people can say what they want, and even I went in saying, I don't know if he's going to be nice, because I'm like, I know he's a heel, but is he a real heel? And luckily, one of my friends who's a vendor there was staying at the hotel that night on Saturday, and Bischoff was only there on Sunday, and he sat there with him at the bar, and he said he was just like a regular guy chilling out, super cool. So it made me feel better. So when I went to go approach him, because I saw him first in the hallway, like in the lobby passing, and we made eye contact, and I'm like, don't do anything weird. So I just smiled and said hi and kept walking. And he said hello. And I'm like, okay. And so when I finally went to his table, so courteous, so nice. We didn't have a long interaction. I just said, thank you so much for being here. And, I'm happy to see you. I never really thought I would meet you. And yeah, it was just, he was like, I'm happy to be here and, be around fans.
How long was his line? I'm actually just curious on this.
You know what? When he first came, it was around lunchtime that they all started, or at least he came in. He had a decent line. He also did a Q&A. I didn't go to that.
Oh, wow.
So I know his line was limited, but I knew as soon as he walked through those doors, I knew it was him. And he had a good, decent line. And then it died down. He went to the Q&A, and then I waited until he came back. Because he was sitting across from Godfather. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'll just hang out with Charles until Bischoff gets here. And turn around and like, hey, friend. So he was really cool. I got an autograph.
Nice.
It was just, it was a good interaction. And plus, with this whole series of Who Killed WCW, I'm like, how convenient. So it was good. It was great. He was a very nice man.
Nice. And by the way, that could be a teaser for another episode we're about to do. So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So next, guess who I love to talk about, because I thought, going back to like just cool stories and people coming into wrestling, I specifically remember as the 1-2-3 kid, aka Sean Waltman, aka X-Pac. Well, actually, before X-Pac was 6-Pac and then X-Pac. I love it. I absolutely love him as a wrestler and his character. So what was your interaction with Sean Waltman, X-Pac?
He was really, really awesome. I really wanted to meet him because I love DX. I'm a big fan of the Click.
Same here.
So I am, that's on my bucket list, was to meet at least everyone from the Click. And we know we won't be able to. But, I have Kevin Nash, and then we have Triple H and Shawn Michaels. So I don't know. I'm keeping my, fingers crossed one day. But as soon as I heard X-Pac, I was like, done deal. This is it. He was only there for Saturday.
Okay.
He was really, really nice. A little bit more quiet and toned down than I thought he would be, because, X-Pac was just rowdy and in your face. But what was really funny is, like you mentioned, 1-2-3 Kid, but before that, he was Lightning Kid when he wrestled at Razor. And that was one of the pictures that we had to pick from the autographs. And of course, I ended up doing an X-Pac one, but I saw Lightning Kid and Razor from one of the Raw matches. And I was like, what do you think of that about that one? And he was like, no. No. I was like, what? That's where you started. He was like, no. And he was like making fun of himself. He's like, look at that pudgy face. Look at that young guy. He's like, no, you want X-Pac. And I was like, you're right.
How many wrestlers have had so many of these gimmicks and were able to survive?
Right.
You know, when you have those many transformations, a lot of times, I mean, just be honest, like they'll just cut you loose if none of that's just working through. But he was able to kind of evolve himself. And then if you notice, here's the other cool thing. You mentioned like when he started off as a kid and kept going up. He started off as a kid, and like the gimmick was goofy, and then eventually, he turned to six-pack, and then that just unleashed an entire new element.
And one thing we have to give him credit for is he's been part of one of most of the biggest factions of all time. So not only was he part of the Clique with our 5, he was also part of NWO as 6, and then also DX as X-Pac. So I'm like, that's pretty awesome to say I'm part of all 3.
Next one, our boy. By the way, obviously, both of our Desiree and I went to Florida State. I met each other. Ron Simmons, Farouk.
Amazing. And just like the Godfather, he was not someone I thought I would have this interaction with. And it was because he's so intimidating as a man. So when you see him in a crowd with other talent, so let me just set this straight. It was Ron Simmons, Lex Luger, Hardy Boys, Hacksaw, Scott Steiner, and Sergeant Slaughter. Like, Hardys were jumping around, having a great time. And then there's Ron, like, he's like, he's so scary. And I'm going to admit it, for the past couple of years of going there, he's gone every year. And I passed because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have a good interaction with him, because he was so scary, like looking at him. And I made it a point. I was like, I am going to meet Ron because I have to do it, because we are Seminoles. And so there was no one at his table. It was like during lunchtime. So it was that awkward time where everyone's like taking a break. And I'm like, I'm just going to go up there and look at his pictures. I definitely, I'm going to meet him, but let me just, look at some stuff. And, he's like digging through his bag and doing something. And then he looks up and he's like, oh my God, hey guys, I'm so sorry for not seeing you walk up. And I'm like, oh, it's okay, Mr. Simmons. And, and it's like, he's just like a normal guy. And then we immediately got onto the subject of FSU, because he had not only like pictures of him as Farouk and APA pictures, and he had 2 Florida State pictures. And I'm like, oh, these are really cool. I'm going to get this one. And I just had to tell him, be like, hey, by the way, I graduated from Florida State. And his whole demeanor, he was like, you went to Florida State? I said, yes, sir. And I graduated. He gets up around the table, walks over and gives me the biggest bear hug. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying. And, we spend about 15-20 minutes going on about Florida State football, just Southern football, college football. He is so passionate and just so still in it. And we talked about, his career as a, having the championship and just going as, through Farouk and Nation and APA. But he was the coolest guy, super warm. And we probably talked to him for about 20-30 minutes. He was so engaged. And then by the time we turned around to happen to look around, there was a huge line waiting. And he was like, no, I'm talking to these guys. And I'm like, oh my God. And so, and one really awesome thing is you pay to see these people, which is totally cool. Like, that's my expectation, is I know I'm going to spend a lot of money to meet these guys that I've loved for years. He's like, I'm going to give y'all an autograph. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm paying for it. And then I pull out my phone, because I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take pictures with him too. And then I'm like, go to give him my credit card. He's like, no, we're not. He goes, you're fine. Florida State, you're good. And I'm like, oh my God. And, that was just awesome. But he completely turned, he was not what I expected him to be.
Nice. That's so awesome. And that's also, yeah, I think we kind of talked about this off camera too. You said he just does not like the Gators, which is great.
He despises the Gators, which I
Yes.
love even more.
That's awesome. That makes it so much better. I love it. Oh man. So it seems like the Godfather and Ron Simmons kind of like topped it off to you the most. It's from first experience, right? Yeah.
Those are my guys from this weekend.
Next episode, we are going to recap the PLE of Clash of the Castles. You can also email us at the shootsandladders@gmail.com. Please send us a DM on Instagram as well, and follow us on all platforms, and we will talk to you soon.